Getting ready for week 6 in college football. Mark Lawrence joining me from Playbook Experts YouTube channel and playbooksports.com as always as we take a look at what's going on in the world of college football. How's it going, Mark?
I'm doing just terrific, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing better because last week, I told you about 3 weeks ago, I had like this awesome, great, best week of the year. And I knew it
Yes.
was a matter of time before it evened out. Uh, it was awful. Matter of fact, when I heard Victor on your show yesterday talk about the dogs getting crushed last week, it
Uh-huh.
was interesting because I was going over my picks at the end, my final picks, and I was, just looking through them, double checking and everything. And I'm realizing, man, I got a lot of dogs in here. And I'm like, is that normal? Why do I have so many dogs? So I went through my history of picks and I go, am I doing too many dogs this year? And I went through and went, no, not really. I guess not. Maybe just this week. I just felt a little strange though. It was like, it does feel right to have all these dogs. I have like 80% dogs. I didn't understand why I had so many of them, but I said, all right, well, whatever. And sure enough, the week I had all the dogs got crushed. And of course, it didn't help that Jalen Daniels decided to have back spasms before the
No.
Texas game.
No, that was a big, big loss, obviously, just before the game to have something come down like that. That was one of the bigger dogs that I liked in the card last week, but that's out of our control. It's
That's right.
nothing we can do but a little bit of crying over spilt milk and move on to the next week.
Yeah, that's what we always talk about. Is that you, as long as you feel confident in what you're doing and your model, you don't give up, you don't double down, you just
Stay the
hey,
course.
bad
Right.
week, don't try to chase late on. I had a bad Saturday. I got to chase on Sunday. Right, bad 1 o'clock games on Sunday. I got to chase the 4 o'clock with the prime time. No, just if you feel you're just not having a good, everything is going wrong. Trust me, more than likely, it's going to keep going wrong. So just stop and just wait until next week. So and that's what you have to do. And so that's of course what we're doing. And we are going to kick off things here with the SEC as usual. And we've got a couple of really big games in the SEC, starting with Alabama and Texas A&M. And boy, this is a real tough one to figure out because it looks so good in one end because you have Alabama sitting there. I mean, I have one sports book that has Texas A&M favored by a point.
Oh boy.
So
Wow.
you have Alabama as like a 1.5 on DraftKings. So every sports book is going to be different here and there by a point or two. So yeah, it's very enticing to go to Alabama. They had the big breakout offensive performance last week. But there's something. I tell you what. I mean, I'm with you. I'm not a big Jimbo Fisher guy, um, but I'm kind of starting. Maybe I'm wrong for thinking this way, but I'm starting to feel that I don't know. Maybe Texas. Maybe this Texas A&M team. Maybe because we know how talented they are. That's never been the issue.
For sure.
It's just about do they have the chemistry and the coaching and their ability, even just recently, to not lose games that they're not supposed to, that kind of thing. Winning the game against Arkansas, a rival that they've struggled against, not to beat, but close games, and they just really just hammered them at the line of scrimmage physically, dominated them. They did it with the backup quarterback. We talked about how much that I believe in Max Johnson, the backup quarterback, even though he did struggle a little bit because he's basically an old school pocket passer. He's not an athlete. And he had a couple of fumbles. He had like 3 turnovers in the game, which is not good, but they still blew him out. They only gave up 174 yards of total offense, which against KJ Jefferson is pretty impressive. So that's why I'm taking Texas A&M. Not big, but I'm just gonna go on the side that yeah, I do believe this is a better Texas A&M team. By the way, what a 2 week stretch for the Aggies. They have Tennessee on the road next week. That's something else. You got 2 of the top 3 best teams maybe in the SEC in consecutive weeks. I think we're going to see a defensive performance. I could see this game not being more. Again, I'm not a totals guy, but I'll say this is definitely like in the high teens, low 20s. I think that's the type of game we're probably going to see, which means that it's probably going to come down to, little things.
Well, that's what Victor King on our podcast called the under in this football game as well. You got two really good defenses, as you mentioned here. The Alabama offense appears, and I say appears, and I put that in quotes, have woken up. They've won the last 3 games in a row, but they've only averaged 361 yards in those 3 victories. So they're not really hitting on all
No,
cylinders right
not
now.
really.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. No,
No.
they're just all they have is wins on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But the thing that keeps me from knee jerking to Texas A&M here is the lack of points. And I say the lack of points because the last 7 times Alabama has met Texas A&M, Alabama has been a favorite of 17 or more points each of the 7 games.
Yeah.
So what happened between last year and this game here, where not only did you lose 17 points, you lost by whatever they were favored by last year too. I think they were double-digit favorites at home. So added up, this is like a 24, 5, 6, 7, 8 point swing from last
Yep.
year.
Sure
Yep.
is.
And that's just crossing too much of a bridge for me. I just
Yep.
can't do that. Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't. There's no way I could take this game big in any way, shape, or form. I don't really think anybody really knows what's going to happen, to tell you the truth. But I can understand why some people would go with that with Alabama. Not only history, and then you look at Jimbo Fisher, 2-9 straight up, 2-8-1 against the spread when he's a dog of less than 5.
Yep. He's not any good in small dog situations. He's just the better team wins the game. That's basically what that says. And you've got also that Nick Saban hex against former assistants, and he being one of them, Jimbo Fisher. I'll say this: when this game is over, and if the game goes off Texas A&M a favorite in the game, and Alabama wins the game, at the end of the year, you're going to say, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
where
right.
was I? How did I fall asleep and let Alabama go off as an underdog in a football game like this?"
Yeah.
That's the fear. You with me?
I tell you what, the way that I've seen enough now of football for the month to really truly believe that there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen for those 4 spots. It's just even Georgia. Anything can happen. And what's so great about that is that now we're a year away from getting 12 teams. So
Yep.
that's even going to make it more fun that you could have 6 or 7 teams in the playoffs next year with a shot to win the national championship. That's what we want to see. But as far as this year, yeah, I just think that's because look at LSU last week. I mean, what on earth was that? I mean, that made absolutely no sense. I mean, you would have thought that LSU had 5 guys hurt on their defense or something. No, that's everybody's back basically from last year. Good defense, supposed to be better. What's going on there? And now you got to also throw in, well, hey, Lane Kiffin actually won a game that he probably wasn't supposed to win based on history. So and that was a close game against Alabama. That wasn't no blowout or anything. So this whole thing's wide open now. But Alabama can tell everybody on Saturday, well, not so wide open. Or Texas A&M can beat Alabama, and then yes, it's true. We have a wide open season ahead of us. So.
Well, this is a kind of a football game that's intriguing because of the names. Probably must-watch television. If you're checking off the boxes for the college football games, it's very, very intriguing and appealing. But I don't think it's a real bettable football game. I really, truly don't.
Nope. Matter of fact, I'm going to post up futures because I have I have a couple of new future teams this week, and one of them is Texas A&M, and that's because if they win this game, I would take them now at 120-1 to win the national champion. I'm pretty surprised about that. 120-1. So if Miami's no slouch, I think we pretty much look. They haven't beaten anyone from Texas A&M yet, but I think we all know Miami's now turned a little bit of a corner. So that'll be a good loss at the end of the season. But you're just looking and you're going, yeah, you know what? If they beat Alabama and then looking at their schedule, it is tough. There's no question about that. And they have the one loss, and that's tough. But if it's going to be as wide open as I think it could be, I think there's a good chance we'll see a 2-loss team in the playoffs. And so if you're from the SEC, and if Texas A&M can beat Alabama, and then make sure they win the division at the end of the year to get to the SEC championship game, I'll take the 120-1 now on that possibility, knowing that this game this week is a flip of the coin.
Well, I wouldn't even bank on them being a two-loss team if they win this game. They can run the table. I know it's difficult, a slate, but they run the table. They win this game, they run the table. They're in. I don't think there's an argument about that. And you talk about a two-loss team. Last year was the first time ever we had a two-loss team in the playoff with LSU. Will we have another one this year? That remains to be seen because I don't think there is any true clear-cut favorite here. Georgia looks to be the guy, but each week we're waiting for Georgia to get knocked down. And yeah, I predict between now and when the college football playoffs begin, Georgia will have a loss, whether it's in the SEC championship game or somewhere along the way. I think they'll take their first defeat. So, which means basically what I'm saying here is that it opens the door for the possibility of another two-loss team making the playoff.
Again, Notre Dame still hanging in there at 40-1. We talked about that last week. And my other new team is Miami at 80-1. And I think that's a solid play at this point. Same thing as far as the whole Texas A&M thing. That's why I think if Texas A&M were to win, that's going to look so much better for Miami. So that's kind of why I did it the same week. And we know Miami, schedule-wise, because the win against Texas A&M, they can afford a loss and still get to the postseason 4. So I think 80-1 is a solid number for them too.
Very attractive, no question. But I like the buck 20-1 on A&M right now.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. Now let's talk about this other really big game because I was just 100% impressed with what I saw from Kentucky against Florida. And so much so that I'm saying this is it. This is it. This is the year. This is the year that Mark Stoops in Kentucky puts their flag down, not on their own home stadium, but they do it at Georgia on their own field. And I talked about this kid, Ray Davis, a few weeks ago, and I really liked what I saw. We talked about that on this show a few weeks ago. And boy, did he deliver. And they just ran down Florida's throat. And they're not going to run down Georgia's throat, but Georgia was run on a little bit last week. Everybody knows Georgia's vulnerable. Look what happened against Auburn. I mean, they gave up, 20 against Auburn's offense. I mean, Auburn doesn't have much of an offense. So Georgia's clearly vulnerable. And I just love this type of team. They've got the transfer quarterback, so they've got the passing game, they've got the running back. It's like they've been knocking on the door. Last year's Georgia team, nope, not gonna happen. Year before that, not gonna happen. Year before that, not gonna. But this could be the year because Georgia is vulnerable.
It's like the Georgia Bulldogs. Look at it like this, Greg. You go into the freezer and you pull out this. You really want to whet your appetite. You've got a popsicle in there. You like it. It's a really tantalizing, good-looking popsicle. How long can that popsicle stay in place like it is for 3 years? Georgia's going to end up dissipating. They're not going to be anything close to what they were the first year they won the championship.
Every team does. Look at
Exactly
Alabama.
Right.
Look at Clemson. They all go.
Exactly. So as they're melting away, and we can't maybe yet quite say that because they haven't lost a football game yet.
Yep.
But once they do, I'll hit that analogy about how they are melting down from where they were before. But I think it's just difficult for a team when they are a repeating champion. You're targeted by everybody. You're expecting yourself to play up to the level that you played at the year before, which is next to impossible. And it becomes a very, very tough uphill climb for teams like this. And I'm with you. I like Kentucky in this game real well.
Yeah, so a few things here. In the last 4 years in the series, too, and this is important. This is why I'm going with Kentucky and the outright win, but I would love the points at 15, is because if you look at it, Kentucky that's been one of the teams that has given Georgia a little bit of trouble. I mean, if they had an offense, they would have made these games a little bit better. Kentucky's defense has done a pretty good job against Georgia's high-flying offenses the last few years, but Kentucky couldn't score really against them and didn't have any sort of balance. Georgia won the last 4. Kentucky covered the last 4 in the series. So that's good if you just want to go ahead and take the 4. I mean, take the 14 and a half. And also, last one, Kentucky has covered 6 straight as dogs of 11 or more in a revenge situation. So
Very good revenge team, especially in conference games, and that's what this is all about. This checks a lot of boxes. This particular football game does. My only concern here is that how impressively Kentucky won last week. Now Georgia appeared to struggle because of the combination of those two. Do you expect to see that continuation happening, the same paths for each football team? Probably not. But even if Kentucky doesn't play to the level they did last week, and Georgia steps it up a bit, you still have a lot of points here with 14 and a half points.
yeah, because we talk a lot about offensive players and all that, and there have been some really good defensive players that have left college ball recently, and that's kind of like I think where Georgia is that they've just had so much talent go to the NFL on the defensive side of the ball, especially. But Georgia too. Let's keep this in mind. Georgia is 0-3-1 against the spread this year, and Kentucky, meanwhile, is sitting there at 4-0 against the spread. So that's a nice combination there.
It is. If the gap isn't widening too fast, too quickly here, because if Georgia was 4-0 and Kentucky was 0-3-1, we'd be talking about a 20-point dog.
Yes.
Yes. So you're paying a little bit of a price for the success that one team's had and the underperformance so far that the favorites had as well.
And I know we didn't talk about him in the last game, but probably the best. Speaking of defenders, probably the best defensive player, the next great edge rusher on Alabama is the Dallas Turner kid that we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on for the NFL draft next year. Okay, so just a couple of quick notes before we leave the SEC. LSU's at Missouri. So this is it for LSU. Have to run the table, and they have to have stuff happen because let's keep in mind, there might be a lot of LSU fans or people who think it's all over, but it's not. Why is it not? Because in November they play Alabama and Texas A&M, and so if LSU wants to try to figure out what the heck's going on defense, obviously they're not going to run the table, keep playing defense like this. I don't know what's happening there. But if they can right the ship defensively, we know they got the offensive firepower with the quarterback and those receivers. So now the futures probably have really gone up. Matter of fact, let me check the futures out for LSU. I didn't even let's see. They're 150-1 now. So, and I definitely wouldn't take them this week. I'd say, well, I got to see something because this Missouri team. This is their shot. This is Drinkwitz's chance. You've got this LSU team on the ropes, and you're in a good position finally with the program, but they still the Kansas State win was nice and all that, but they need to have that really big SEC win, and they get LSU and Tennessee at home this year. So they have to win one of these two this year, I think, and maybe they will. And this is a big spot for them on Saturday at home.
Huge spot for Missouri here, and I know most people are going to be a little bit reticent about fading LSU off the loss, but we use them in our midweek alert newsletter. That's like our Racing Form newsletter, where we put statistical yardage stat facts side by side in a horse racing type fashion, and you can compare exactly strengths and weaknesses. But what you see here jumping off the page is the fact that in Missouri, you've got a home underdog that has 119 yards a game, the better defense. Okay. And also a Missouri rush defense that allows 2.5 yards a carry, as opposed to an LSU rush defense that allows 5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
This is what I call that tape job, Greg. Just put tape over the names of the teams. If you saw this jump out, you'd insist Missouri's the favorite here.
Yeah, LSU is again. That's why I said the quarterback and the receivers, because they're just not. There's no balance on the team right now. They used to have great running backs, and I don't know. It's not. It's all pass and receivers, and I'm sure that's probably what's getting into trouble too. I mean, you got to be able to run the football and control the clock. But we'll see. We'll see what Missouri can do in that one. And by the way, Arkansas at Ole Miss. And another big one now for Ole Miss because they were able to, upset LSU again. Lane Kiffin, does he have it in him? Is it possible that they've got something different this year? Judkins finally had a big game, by the way. You just talked about LSU's run defense. He had 175 yards on the ground, I think, and that was definitely the difference in that one. And keep in mind, LSU was up by 9 in the fourth quarter, mid fourth quarter, and they just blew that one.
Exactly.
Yeah, and now it's just crazy the way that game went. Uh, but anyway, fact is that Ole Miss now is taking on an Arkansas team that just seems to be, I don't know, it's like they're running out of gas already. It's like they need a bye week and they just can't get one.
No, but it's because they're an overrated football team, and with a lot of name and reputation, and they have holes, and they're being exposed by good teams, up and coming teams. Missouri checks that box as well. They're a good up and coming team who themselves feels like they're in contention to be playing and eligible for the Southeast Conference title game. I can't give up on Missouri here, especially against an overrated LSU football team.
Mississippi and Arkansas. Arkansas in the last 10 years has beaten Ole Miss 6 out of 10 and covered 9 out of 10. So how about that? Arkansas has a good history against Ole Miss, and by the way, Arkansas did get their running back Sanders back for the Texas A&M game, but that didn't make a difference. And KJ Jefferson looks like his final year. I think he has another year maybe of eligibility. He might want to come back because things haven't gone well for them so far. But that's the 12-point spread. I just can't touch Arkansas at this point.
Well, you get a real well-coached football team and a real good quarterback there. That's a real nice combination to start with when you're taking double digits. And the question is Mississippi's gone through a bit of a gauntlet here of late. Can they sustain that in a game like this? I wouldn't be at all surprised if Mississippi doesn't play down to Arkansas's level in this game.
Okay, now let's talk about the Big Ten. And Ohio State is returning after the bye week and that big win against Notre Dame. They're hosting Maryland. And, this is Mike Locksley's done a nice little job at Maryland, but really all he's done in my mind, he's to me, he's like mini Steve Sarkisian. He's done a really good job of recruiting in that area. And that area is a lot of good talent. And he's done a good job, especially at the quarterback position. Having this to his little brother there for 4 years is just a godsend. And he's able to get receivers and so forth, and that's really been the difference. But the problem is, as we've said with Sarkisian in the past, is once you then you win all those games against teams that you're just more talented than because you recruited well. But then once you step up against the big boys and you have to outcoach them, well, that's when there's a problem. And that's what Mike Locksley has not been able to do. So here he gets another chance. But in this series, Maryland has actually played Ohio State pretty tough the last few times at Maryland. But they've just gotten hammered away at Ohio State. And that's the reason why, Ohio State, if you look at it, the last 4 games, in 4 games against Maryland as Big Ten opponents, they've won by an average of 250. Actually, they've won by a total of 250 to 73. That's a 44 points per game margin, which is why when you're thinking about giving 18 or 20, that's probably not even that bad if you want to take Ohio State.
Well, yeah, and you've got an Ohio State name here that a lot of people are going to say they're just going to steamroll this team and expose them, for not being as good as they purport to be. But in our newsletter, we do this thing called the 5-0 Fat Cats. And what we basically do is fade all 5-0 teams who are favored in Game 6. And we play on all 5-0 teams that are underdogs in Game 6. We have a collision of that in this football game here. So because of the smart box, I would not be very smart if I tried to go against that, okay? So, I'm going to have to take the points in this football game. I'm not going to do it with a lot of gusto because it's still Ohio State. And this is a rather cheap price.
Yeah.
But if Maryland cashes here and I don't have a piece of it, I would kick myself in the rear end. So it'll be a small piece for me on Maryland in the game.
Yeah, because if you look at it, Maryland has at least bucked a couple of early trends from the playbook guide. And that is coming into this season, they were 1-12 on the road against 500 or greater conference teams, and they covered Michigan State. So now they're 2-12, and coming into the season, 0-15 straight up and against the spread, off a conference win when taking on a team that is anything but a winless team, and they bucked that trend as well. 1-0. Now they're 1-15. So that does kind of, you look at that and you're like, maybe there's something different about this Maryland team.
Yeah, they have stepped up their game. Tonga Viola, to his brother, is playing some really good football right now. Some people think he may be the best quarterback in the Big Ten Conference right now at this point. And again, I'll reiterate, it never hurts when you've got a team that has the better quarterback on the field here. Ohio State's breaking in a quarterback. Tonga Viola's been there, and he's only maturing and getting better with each and every start. So if I look at the football game, I would have to only look at the dog in this contest.
Okay, now there's another game in this conference. I'm going with a dog, a double-digit dog in the SEC, and I'm going to go with a double-digit dog in the Big Ten. And I'm taking Rutgers against Wisconsin. Matter of fact, I'll throw in just to pop up these. Everybody can freeze that. Those are my picks for this week, including those double-digit upsets. So Rutgers being a part of that. And Rutgers, Greg Schiano is slowly rebuilding the program the way he did it the first time around. And so far this year is that kind of different year. This is their bowl year now. This is the year that they'll win 6, maybe 7 games. And I do believe that they have one game in them where they'll beat someone that they're not supposed to. Because that's kind of also that next step. You don't just want to go to a bowl, but you'd like to have that one game that you can hang your hat on. And I think Wisconsin is. I think that this is one of the teams I think that could be in this spot, because Wisconsin, yeah, their last game might have been their best, and maybe now they're finally starting to get things going. But I don't really see it, because Mordecai in that passing game has done nothing at this point. I mean, he has 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. This is a guy that came into the program the last 2 years with a 72-22 ratio, and now he's 2-3, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. That hasn't started to gain traction yet, and we know how good Allen is at the running back. But they're a 2 running back team. Running back number 2 out for the year, so now it's all Allen. So if Rutgers can stop Allen in the running game, they got a shot. And Wisconsin is, even though they had that nice win against Purdue the last time out, struggled to early in that first game against Buffalo. That was a second half game. Georgia Southern outgained them a few weeks ago at Camp Randall. So I'm thinking, hey, you know what? We talked about Rutgers and how close they kept the Michigan game a few weeks ago. Then why can't they make this a 4-quarter game?
I agree on all counts. I think this is a game for Rutgers where they could put that big notch in their belt, if you will, and pull the rug on Wisconsin. The question is, does Wisconsin have good games in them in back-to-back efforts? We haven't seen it so far, and you got to lay a price, a bounty, to be able to cash a ticket to say, yes, they do. But I'm a big Greg Schiano fan, especially taking points in situations where he's got the ability to go in there and pull the rug out on a favorite that's questionably priced. And I think that's exactly the case in this football game. I don't know. I haven't looked down there yet to see if Rutgers is on your money line plays this particular week. Yes, it is. We'll discuss that a little bit later on, but I'm not at all surprised.
And then the other game in the Big Ten, Purdue and Iowa to mention. And Iowa is just a 3-point favorite at home against Purdue. Now you know there are things going on there, because Purdue is still not considered one of the better Big Ten teams. What makes this a tricky spot, though, is that Purdue, I shouldn't say, well, the dog in the series has outright won 3 straight and covered 6 straight. So the dog's the play. And you know what? When you're getting 3 points from Iowa, this is a little bit different than any other team, because it's like I could take 3 points and you and still feel that, yeah, you know what? I might not still win this game, but at least I got the 3. Because that's the team Iowa is. This could be like 10-9. This could be, 16-14. This could be something where every point matters.
Where you don't have to score 3 touchdowns to beat Iowa,
Yeah, exactly. Because McNamara is out for the year now. So
right.
The starting quarterback's out, and they got this young kid who filled him in last week. Deacon Hill went 11 of 27 for 115, a touchdown and a pick against Michigan State. And Iowa did what they usually do. That's why it's tough to go against them in this spot, is because Kirk Ferentz is such a really good coach. They always just find ways to win ugly. So
and that's one of the reasons I think that Tanner Mordecai has not succeeded at Wisconsin is you had a good quarterback, a real true athletic quarterback who come into a football team whose whole roster was not built around the passing game. And you're asking everybody to adapt to him, and it's not happening there. And it's the same thing at Iowa. This whole program is not built around a passing game. It's all built around this slug it out and play defense type style of football. And we're seeing it again this year. We're probably seeing it more so this year than we've ever seen it before. This offense is next to pathetic. They're the second worst offense in the FBS this year.
oh, it's
Pathetic.
We talked about it last week. Their
Yes.
number one receiver is a tight end.
Well, there you go. I mean,
And we're
that
not
tells you-
talking about Brock Bowers. You know, I mean, you know,
A stud,
and
right.
their number one receiver before that, when he got injured, was a tight end.
Yep.
So, and again, the top running back hasn't played. So they can't run the ball. They got no receivers. Now you know why they don't score.
And now you know why they pass the ball to the tight end, because it's just a little 5-yard dink and dunk and no
Yeah.
risk.
Oh,
That's the boring style of football they play.
that's unwatchable. By the way,
Yep.
another key game, of course, because Michigan's playing in it. Michigan woke up against Nebraska last week. And interesting, if you take a look at it, Michigan, the last couple of years, actually, you know, got out of the gate, didn't play anybody tough, and nobody was like overly impressed. Yeah, okay, you blew out teams, but they didn't blow out anybody, so nobody was thinking about anything. But last year, in their first road game, you know, they went to Iowa, and it was a lot of, oh, you know what, you know, maybe this is a good spot for Iowa. No, not so fast. Michigan won and covered. A couple of years ago, when things really started with Harbaugh that year, same thing happened. They started the road trip at Wisconsin as a 2-point dog, and they blew them out. So they've got this thing going now where, you know, they're just taking care of business at home against teams they're supposed to beat, and it doesn't look all that impressive. And then they come out that first road game, and it's like, no. I mean, we're now away from the distraction at home, and now we're taking things serious. We know we have to up our game, and they just seem to actually play maybe better on the road than they do at home over these last couple of years. And by the way, that is a game, though, that you are going to talk about on the Playbook Experts channel.
Yes, I
So
will.
it's your play of the week. So anybody wants to know who you like in that game, they could check out the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. Okay, let's talk about the ACC and Florida State. They're playing pretty much nobody. Virginia Tech, so they'll have an easy win. Clemson had an important win to kind of I guess save face.
Let's not pass by Florida State all that quickly, though, Greg.
Okay.
And I just want to throw a little word of caution out there.
Okay.
Okay. This is a team that's very, very popular in the public eye. They're undefeated. They've got a couple of big notches in their belt, big wins so far this football season. But my word of warning is this: their last two victories that they've had, they've been out-yarded over 100 yards in both of those football games. That catches up with you like unbelievably quickly and fast. And Virginia Tech's playing some really pretty good football right now. They'll find Florida State playing right down to the level of Virginia Tech. They're going to walk off the field with a little 10-point win here. They'll be happy they didn't escape an upset, and Virginia Tech will play their rear ends off in that contest.
Well, then this is definitely a game that Florida State, if they want to remain a serious contender, then they need to kind of change that narrative,
Yes, they do.
especially against a team that they're supposed to. And they're coming off a week off, so you know that could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. They're going to have 3 straight home games, but the game really, if you look at their schedule, it's not very tough before now in Miami, and which is why again they're a good futures pick. But if in this situation, between now and Miami, there's just one tricky game. That's homecoming against Duke. So
Ooh, that's not good. That's not good news at all, because, you know, I'm a big anti-homecoming guy, especially when those homecoming teams are favored. There's a lot of distraction going on around campus that particular week. And in Duke, you got an opponent that is coming in there not just to play close and tough. They're coming in there to win the game. So that should be interesting to see whether or not they can handle that situation.
Yeah. And by the way, Wisconsin's at homecoming against Rutgers on
There you go. That
Saturday.
also helps the case.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and the other thing too is the team that plays there, it's like a spit in their face, because the reason why you schedule certain teams for homecoming is because what you said. The coaches know there's distractions, so they want a game that they think is easy, a game that
A
puff a
patsy,
cupcake.
right?
Yes.
Exactly right. Right.
So teams like, and look, this was probably scheduled a few years ago, and a couple of years ago. Oh yeah, Duke, no, they stink. Rutgers, they stink. Well, not that's things have changed, and now
Yeah.
those two teams might come in there thinking, oh, homecoming. Okay, you picked us for homecoming. Okay, well, we'll see about that. Anyway, but Duke's just a month away. Speaking of Duke, holy moly, I don't know how they lost that game, and it's like Notre Dame. It must be the trend. It must be the hex that Notre Dame has over ACC teams, because not only did they win the game, but they ended up covering the game, which is like, I don't know how that happened, but that was nuts that they
That
gave
was a
up
miracle. That was a miracle cover. Yes.
a 4th and 16 17-yard run for Sam Hartman. And that was just a bad. I understand why they called like the prevent zone kind of 4th and 16. I get it, but on the previous plays they just kept blitzing, and every time they blitzed, they weren't doing anything. Hartman was running around, he's chucking the ball up, and what do they do on that one? They said everybody back. They send 3 guys in. Hartman rolls out of the pocket, and everybody's so far back, he's got complete room to run for 17 yards and pick up the first down. A couple of plays later, they run it in and cover the game on the 2-point conversion.
I love Sam Hartman. We talk about it every week here, and he just comes to play every football game. He's the kind of a guy, Greg, that if you got a big ticket and he's playing against you, you don't want him to be the quarterback playing against you.
Sure.
Because he's making plays like that. He refuses to die. And that's why I think he was a huge pickup for Notre Dame. And that's why I think Notre Dame might even barge into the football playoffs this year. They're going to have to obviously beat Louisville here. And I sort of, I have to admit this, I sort of fell asleep in our newsletter on a selection in this game because I was totally enraptured with Notre Dame in the manner in which they came back and stole the game against Duke and figured, okay, they're on their march now to the college football playoff. Excuse me. And they're not going to let Louisville stand in their way. But what I overlooked is the fact that Louisville happens to also be a 5-0 dog this particular week.
Yeah, there you go.
So
it's sort of
our
like what was the other one? Maryland almost. It's
Yes.
like, all right, they're 5-0 dog. I'm taking them,
Yep.
but it ain't a 5-star.
No, it ain't. And in fact, in the newsletter, we called the margin for Notre Dame to cover, and now I have to eat crow, which basically means I can't take Louisville because I'm in print with Notre Dame.
But
I'm-
in reality, you see, I mean, how many times do we have to talk about their dominance in ACC games? It's absolutely ridiculous how much
Yes, it
they
is.
win and cover ACC games.
Yep. And then it all started when they sort of semi-incorporated them into the conference, not as a full-fledged member. They were a member of the conference basketball-wise, and they helped them fill out a schedule football-wise earlier. And it was beginning to look closer and closer, like Notre Dame is going to maybe join the ACC here. And they just chewed them up and spit them out. So, it also doesn't bode well for Louisville there that way. But to me, I'll end up watching the game because of the mistake that I made. But I'll also throw that word of caution or warning out there that Louisville is a 5-0 dog.
Yeah, look, to me, I think this is one of those games that there are good things, good trends, good stats on both sides, which is I'm just going with, I think Notre Dame's just a better team. They were, look, we knew that was going to be a tough game against Duke, and it wasn't a tough game loss. It was a tough game win. And now they've got over that. And I think that they're going to, because of that, they got another week, and they know they have to be focused. This isn't a weak team. They're an undefeated team, and it's a road game. So there's no looking ahead at USC. I don't see it.
No, I don't see it either.
They can't look ahead because if they lose this game, they're probably not. They have no chance, pretty much, for the playoffs.
Exactly. They can't afford the loss, and it is Southern Cal, unquestionably. But I don't think you'll see a look ahead here, and I think Marcus Freeman is doing a real nice job with this football program as well.
And here's another couple that go both ways. Notre Dame has covered 12 straight in the second of back-to-back road games against winning teams. They're 14-4 against the spread in their last 18 as a road favorite generally. And then on the other side, you got Jeff Brom. Let's remember this. Jeff Brom is a very good dog head coach of Purdue. So it's the first time Louisville's a dog this year. So we'll find out whether or not that moves from Purdue to Louisville.
So, we'll learn a lot about both of these teams this week for sure.
Yep. All right. So but I do like Notre Dame in that one. And then Georgia Tech and Miami. I just want to throw this in there as well. Georgia Tech, speaking of looking ahead, you can't look when you're a young team and you're trying to just kind of break in and you're trying to change a program. You can't look ahead to Miami. You just can't, and they did, and they paid the price against Bowling Green. And look, I feel kind of it's one of those situations where I've talked highly about both teams, and so on the one hand, at least Georgia Tech took care of business the week before at Wake Forest. And Bowling Green, we'll talk about them a little bit later on. They did it again. They beat Minnesota a few years ago on the road. They beat Georgia Tech last week. But keep this in mind. Georgia Tech has been a pain in the neck against Miami, series-wise. Georgia Tech has won 2 of the last 5 and covered 4 of the last 5. And they have also covered Miami 3 straight times on the road, which is where they're at in this spot as a 20-point road dog. So, by the way, Georgia Tech did they made a change on the defensive side. They removed the defensive coordinator, put him in a different position, elevated the linebacker coach to defensive coordinator, and that's because they have the 19th rated offense in college football, and they've got to do a better job on defense. They're 116th on defense.
Well, those changes were needed, obviously, for a football program like that. And you talked about them falling asleep against Bowling Green in a game like that. It was pathetic. They go out there, what were they, 20, 21-point favorite in the football contest?
Yep.
And they didn't just lose the game; they're beating the stats too. It was a square up, honest win by Bowling Green in the game. So no excuses for Georgia Tech in a game like that.
No, and keep this in mind. Brent Key, the Georgia Tech head coach, 7-3 as a road dog. And in the last 2 road games at Miami, Georgia Tech lost by 3 as a 10-point dog and won by 7 as an 18-point dog. So Georgia Tech has done a good job at Miami. I'm going to take the points in the game and think that they're going to rebound, but Miami is clearly the better team right now. And then one more game to throw in there, and that's the North Carolina State Marshall game. And when you talked about this game on your show yesterday, I was like, yes, absolutely. I'm right there with you. When you talked about Marshall against NC State, I had Marshall last year, and they're upset against Notre Dame as an upset pick, and they've just done well. I mean, it seems like every time I take Marshall, either in a dog or favorite situation, they come through, and I'm taking them again. Why not? Ali has done a really great job. He's an underrated running back for the team. They found themselves a nice little quarterback, this kid Fancher. He's a dual threat kid. It's the first time Marshall's a dog this year. They're a 2-1 dog. They've covered 10 straight as dogs of 3 or more when they take on an opponent coming off a straight-up loss. And this is a North Carolina State offense that's 99th in college football. And you're getting 6.5 to 7 points from an offense that doesn't score very much.
Now, this is that medium-sized dog that you like to play on a money line. And you do it with confidence because you feel that they can win this football game. NC State's got problems. There's no question about that. This is a non-conference game, which is really a bad spot for NC State to have to host Marshall like this. Marshall's one of only 21 teams in college football this year that has won the yards in every football game they played. So what they're doing this year is legitimate. I mean, they're controlling the line of scrimmage and they're controlling the yardage in football games. You have to look at a dog like Marshall.
Let's move on to the Big 12. And, of course, the Oklahoma-Texas game is the big one. You have an Oklahoma, they're in a spot coming off the embarrassing 49-0 loss last year. This was a rivalry in the previous 8 games that had been decided by 1 possession. And then, boom, 49-0 last year. This was the part of Oklahoma's bad, just crazy season where things just didn't go very well. They didn't look anything like what Lincoln Riley had left behind. They had lost 2 straight heading in. They decided to sit Dillon Gabriel, and they end up with their 3rd straight loss and a 49-0 loss. Well, they're a different team this year. They have won and covered every game. Texas, meanwhile, we said this last week, and I probably jinxed Jalen Daniels when I said it. We talked about why we liked Kansas against Texas, and then one of the things we talked about was Texas playing against all these weak quarterbacks, and then also playing against all these backup quarterbacks because of injury. Well, now it's been 3 straight games where Texas beat an opponent that didn't have their starting quarterback ready for the game. So hopefully Dillon Gabriel takes care of himself between now and Saturday. And if he does, then that's going to be, I think that's a difference maker because yes, Ewers is a nice quarterback, but I think Texas's offense goes with their ground game, as is did last year with that fantastic running back who now of course is with Atlanta. Brooks, he's having matter of fact, he's 3rd, I believe, in rushing per game. And that's what Oklahoma has to do. If they can stop the run game, make Texas one-dimensional, then they're going to have a good chance. Anyway, I'm taking Oklahoma. It's a huge rivalry. You get this 49-0 revenge factor, plus you're getting 6 to 7 points if you want to go that way, or you got 2-1 on the money line.
I like everything you said, especially the fact that Texas has beat 3 backup quarterbacks in a row. You don't realize how meaningful that is because they look impressive on the scoreboard. All of a sudden, everybody's on the Texas bandwagon. All of everything that they did poorly, all of a sudden is forgotten because they appear to be rolling. It catches up with you, and it catches up with you against teams like Oklahoma, who are playing with what I would call very meaningful revenge. First time ever they were ever shut out in that series, in that history. I think you had to go back to 1930 to find that was the worst beat in a regular season football game. A lot of reasons for Oklahoma in this contest here. I played the Sooners in the money line in this game.
And let's now talk about, we were just talking about 5-0 Fat Cat Dogs and little, well, this is not a Fat Cat 5-0 dog. This is a 5-0 Fat Cat dog.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Playing a 5-0 Fat Cat favorite. Look out.
All right. Also in the Big 12. Did you see the line change in the last 24 hours? Now, maybe they know something about Jalen Daniels that I don't. I haven't heard anything yet, but I don't care. How does that Kansas line go from 2 Kansas? By the way, it started at 3 to 2 Central Florida. What are we doing here?
But I'm sure it's a confirmation of Daniels being out. But I think that line that was originally sent out was under that same guise. So this is going to end up being an overreaction to an injury that everybody knew about. That's a capital mistake when you see a line move like that and then people chase it. This is also the opportunity that we've talked about before in the past where this backup quarterback for Kansas who did not perform all that well last week is suddenly cast in the role of a starting quarterback, and they'll rally around him, and he's got some experience now.
Yeah, he does. And he played last year when Daniels was hurt.
Yes, on top of it. Exactly. So, I just think, first of all, I like Kansas in the bounce back here regardless of who quarterback for them.
Yeah.
And now the line's getting stupid is what it's doing.
And Daniels might play. I mean, just imagine if you get Kansas right now and Daniels goes out there and plays.
Well, you talk about what the psyche Kansas has. What's the psyche of Central Florida after last week as well?
Oh.
I mean, my goodness, that was their Big 12 opener and another bad beat segment for Scott Van Pelt. I don't know how they can possibly be up for this football game. I really don't.
And every one of those weird college football comebacks, you always seem to get a defense or special teams touchdown. That's what changes everything. That's what makes it incredible. And that's exactly what happened in that game. So, yeah, you're right. We'll see how they respond because now they're 0-2 in the Big 12 so far. But again, here's the thing. This is why I don't care. And how many times do we have to talk about this? Lance Leipold is now 28-10-1 against the spread as a head coach in the FBS. It doesn't
Oh,
say when Jalen Daniels plays,
nope.
and he wasn't a quarterback at Buffalo. So that's to me the reason why I definitely am liking that game even more. If you want to give Kansas points, and then how does Baylor react? You would think in a positive way against Texas Tech. Texas Tech is the slight favorite after being the slight dog earlier in the week. I think we'll find out, how Baylor responds because I don't even know how Baylor got so far behind in the first place last week. Chapin did come back; he's playing again here. But Texas Tech, by the way, they lost the yardage by almost 100 to Houston last week, and still won the football game. They had a kick
Yeah,
return touchdown and a block punt touchdown.
yeah, that's concerning to me when a team does that, but when I look at the game statistically out of that midweek alert, the thing that jumps off the page is Texas Tech runs the ball over 5 yards a carry and Baylor allows over 5 yards a carry. If Texas Tech had stayed and remained the dog, which they've gone to the favorite now, they would have then been a 5-by-5 dog, and those things are like gold. But they're now the small favorite in the contest, so I would look to be fading a favorite that won a game in the manner in which they did last week and got beat solidly over 100 yards in the stats.
Iowa State, they were not able to hang with Oklahoma last week, but still, I like him this week because I've still got the same deal with Matt Campbell, 26-11 against the spread as a conference dog. So I'm taking Iowa State against TCU. Last year, by the way, TCU beat Iowa State 62-14. So I would expect Iowa State is going to remember what happened last year.
I think that's meaningful revenge. It's meaningful revenge for a coach that's on the hot seat. The team is still playing some really rock solid defense. Iowa State is. That's the only way I could look in that game.
And then remember we talked about the
Roll
possibilities,
barbecue.
and it actually came through for West Virginia Neil Brown with the win last week over TCU. They got their quarterback back, Garrett Green, and so after losing and getting embarrassed by Penn State to start the season, they have now won consecutive Big Ten games against Texas Tech and TCU, and they've now won 4 straight. And Neil Brown, this is his shot. He's got to keep this up. And maybe if he's lucky, he gets a contract extension. Who knows? But and it's not pretty. They don't have like these game breakers at quarterback or running back or anything like that. But they're finding ways to win.
It's kind of a. I'm trying to make an analogy here, and I can't recall the coach, but wasn't there a coach in college football that was always on the hot seat? He would win, and all of a sudden they not only sign him, they'd extend him, and then he'd lose again and lose again and lose again. He'd go back on the hot seat. He'd win, and they'd extend him again. I
Well,
kind of
we know the guy in the NFL. That would be what's his name from the Bengals. But in college football, I
maybe
don't
it was
know.
Dino Babers, maybe
Yeah, I don't
uh,
know. That's an
at
interesting one.
Syracuse. He sat on the hot seat so long, losing, and then he finally has a winning year, and they extended him.
Yeah. Okay,
You
might
know,
be it.
so right,
Uh,
so
yeah.
that could be the case.
Okay, Pac-12, and we got some good ones again. And I'm going to pop up. This is a good time to pop up the Heisman mix. And there's Ray Davis, by the way. He's my new Heisman pick this week. I love him at 120-1 because if Ray Davis and Kentucky win this week, and Ray Davis is a part of that 120-1 has got to go down to what, 20-1?
Well, it's going to go down to at least 50-1. Okay. And if they win, he will be a part of that. I can guarantee you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
more than
Right.
likely.
Right.
Meanwhile, no major changes, but the fact that as we talk about this conference, of course, you got Penix, you got Nix, but let's also throw in who we talked about last week, Cameron Ward, and he is just he's turning into this is I mean this is I don't know how many of these guys are all coming out. One or two might decide to stay next year, but there's a possibility there'll be a ton of quarterbacks coming out this year, and this is one of them. I mean, he's like a sleeper now. NFL prospect is Cameron Ward, and Jake Dickert and this program has got this program going. UCLA had the week off after the Utah loss. UCLA is legit. I still think they're solid, but I'm taking Washington State in this game. There's just something about Ward and this program, and I think they've got something that's just a little bit better than we've seen in a long time, maybe since the Ryan Leaf Rose Bowl. I know Mike Leach had some good teams too. Uh, but anyway, I'm taking Washington State in what should be a really good underrated football game.
Now they're 5-0 dog, Washington State. And if you're a quarterback in the Pac-12 conference and you're putting up any kind of numbers this year, why in God's green earth would you want to come back to the Pac-12 or the Pac-2 next year if you're a Washington State quarterback?
Sure.
So they're playing also for their future here as well. I'm with you. I think UCLA is a nice football team. I think this is a real nice spot for Washington State. They're flying so far under the radar right now. Nobody's giving them any credit. Uh, I'm going to maybe take that back. I think they're only 4-0. Okay, I don't think they have that fifth win yet.
Okay. So they're a 4-0.
Right.
They're
4-0 about the 4-0 kitten. Okay.
Okay. They're 4-0 fat kitten. Okay.
Yes. Right. But they're playing some very, very good football right now, and you got UCLA off their first loss of the season, albeit a week to get ready. But I still think there's a lot of value in Washington State here.
Yeah, and they won't be a 5-0 dog next week because they'll host Arizona. But the week after that, they're at Oregon. So
what they'll be is if they win this game, they'll be favored. There'll be a fade to play against.
They will.
And, yep.
And Arizona, meanwhile, has another tough opponent. And they played pretty tough against Washington. They did not allow 50 points or 60 points. I mean, I thought that their defense actually played pretty decent. They've covered the last 3 years against USC, all in one-score games. Okay, so they have been a cumulative dog the last 3 years by 50.5 points to USC, and they've covered them all, and they've all been one-score games. And it's happening again. They're 22-point dog. Why would I stay against it? We talked about the fact that Delora couldn't play last week, and we talked about how the kid Fafita. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Head coach, really good with quarterbacks. Kid looked good when he came in on the game-winning drive that week, and they did not lose to Washington because of the quarterback situation. So I don't think that's going to matter, but who knows? Maybe Delora will play this week. I haven't heard anything yet about it. But I think I could see Arizona hanging with them definitely in the second half.
I could too. There's a football team that's really completely under the radar. And you got a Southern Cal football program that's really, really choppy defensively. They have to shore that defense up because they can't continue to outscore teams. That can't be their game plan going in and keep relying on Caleb Williams to find the end zone.
Yep.
That sooner or later catches up with you because he's not going to continually find the end zone. The defense is going to have to win some football games for them. So I'm with you. I like Arizona, the under the radar dog here.
And by the way, one of my top picks this week is actually going to be Colorado against Arizona. That line is dropped all the way to 3.5, and I don't know why. I know the young coach at Arizona State, looks like maybe he's going to do a good job there, and Arizona State seems to be getting a little bit better, but talent-wise, it's a mismatch. Colorado had a loss. They came back after the drubbing against Oregon. It was a predictable drubbing. We talked about it. They came back. They hung with USC. And now they're back into we need win mold because this is the type of game you cannot lose if you want to go bowling. And so, again, Colorado is a better team than Arizona State in a must-win type of game. So I have no problem taking Colorado and only having to give up three in the spot.
Well, I was on Arizona State in this spot in the beginning, largely because I was going to fade Colorado and their horrific defense. But all of a sudden, I think the world sees that.
With the line going down?
Yes, exactly. And it's not very often you'll find Colorado come favored on the road in a conference game. This is a new and different Colorado football team, but I still question their defense. They just play all out to out-track you in a football game, and I think you have to play defense at some point, and Colorado's just not doing that. Now, I'm not going to bite at this number here, but if this number's up around 6 or 7, I most definitely would have faded Colorado in the game.
All right, now that's the Pac-12, and that's also going to be it for the Power 5 teams. Let's now move on to the Group of 5. And then I wanted to talk about one game from the AAC, because I've talked about this team the last week or two, and they went out and they got another impressive win on the road and cover, and that's South Florida. Again, I said it last week. I think they're for real rebuilding team after what they did with Alabama. They proved that. They've got a nice young quarterback in Byron Brown. In his last two starts, he's 48 of 63 for 773 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. They've covered 9 straight off a straight up dog win versus a losing team. I do like Trent Dilfer and what he's going to do with the program. I think UAB is a team to watch. This is not like one of those games where I'm picking USF against a bad team. I think UAB, they've got something interesting. And remember, they were a good team just a couple of years ago, and the coaching changed, and that really kind of screwed things up. But I think Dilfer is going to put this program back to where they need to go. But I'm just going to stick with that South Florida for now until they let me down.
I agree with you. You take a look at UAB, they got some holes in their numbers here. They're what we call leaking oil. They got out-yarded each of the last 3 football games in a row. And I believe that South Florida is going the favorite in the football game. Had the Blazers laid points in this contest, automatically fade favorites that are leaking oil in a game like this. I just don't think it'll be any different for UAB in the contest here. I'm with you in the contest.
A couple of quick notes from the conference. UTSA and Temple are playing each other, both 0-4 against the spread this year. So good luck with that. Also, the game against Tulsa and Florida Atlantic. Tulsa has covered 13 straight as dogs of 2 or more following back-to-back straight-up wins. And they are in that spot this week against Florida Atlantic and Tom Herman.
Florida Atlantic's also a leaking oil favorite here, Greg, by the way, what I just talked about. They've been out-yarded each of the last 3 games as well.
Yeah, keep in mind that they're playing with their backup quarterback, the Central Michigan transfer, right now. I mean, they've hung with Clemson and Illinois better than people thought. They've had a tough schedule, but I'm just looking at that big trend and the fact that Kevin Wilson, I'm glad he's getting another opportunity, and he's actually doing a good job because Tulsa's playing better than people thought. Mountain West Conference. Let's talk about Fresno and Wyoming. Why don't we? And this is, they're not very talented offensively, and especially, you see a program, Wyoming, that they're not a pretty team to watch. Just put it that way. But we've talked how many times about Craig Bowl and the amazing job he's done there. I just really like the aura, the chemistry, whatever they got going on this year. Because to go 4 quarters tied with Texas on the road tells me something. To win a game against Appalachian State on a blocked field goal for a touchdown kind of just tells me something. They are 8-2 against the spread. Their last 10 as a home dog. So they're in this spot. Remember, they trailed 17-0 against Texas Tech early on this season. Came back to win that game. And Fresno State, what are they, Mark?
Fresno State is a 5-0 fat cat.
There you go.
Yes, another big-time fade to a team that loves being in the home dog role. What you've also got is sea level up in the mountains against altitude. That's a nice combination.
Oh, by the way, Fresno State, off to a nice start. No wins versus winning teams. Keep that in mind.
Yes.
Their best win was week 1 against Purdue. And also, if you look at the just want to make sure I got this trend right. Actually, I just wanted to mention this, and that is the fact that if Wyoming does win this game, and they're probably better if they have any hopes of a division championship, conference championship, because they got to go on the road after this, and their next 2 road games are against Air Force and Boise State. So
yeah, this is a key clutch game for Wyoming here, and I'd be really surprised if they don't come up with a big effort in this contest.
All right. Now let's talk about the Sun Belt. And you have a pretty big game between Texas State and Lafayette. G.J. Kinney has done a really good job, the former Incarnate Word head coach. They had the big win against Baylor to start the year. The stats actually are for Lafayette. They've had a nice season this season. They've outgained all 5 of their opponents this year, including Minnesota last week. But Minnesota is the only team that they played with a winning record, so you got to keep that in mind. But Lafayette has won all 10 against Texas State in their rivalry, if you want to call it that, by 23 points per game, including 86-13 the last 2 years. Texas State doesn't have much of a defense. It's all offense. I'm not touching the game, but this is a game that might be one of those interesting games to keep an eye on.
I think you hit it right on the head. You can make cases for both sides here. Lafayette's playing really well for a football team that's under the radar, but so too is Texas State. And I'm a big what's his name?
GJ
Kinney?
Yeah, GJ
Kinney. Right. Fan. I think he's doing a great job with this football program here. I'd probably take the points if I had to go to the game because, I think Lafayette's going to come back sooner than they're going to continue to keep moving forward. Give me the points with the Bobcats.
I just want to mention this in the Arkansas State-Troy game. Arkansas State got up to an awful start to begin the season. Butch Jones, you might have thought, well, maybe he's on his way out because they got demolished the first 2 games against Oklahoma and Memphis. But since then, they've won the last 3 by 127-72. But more importantly, they have found themselves a quarterback. They have a true freshman by the name of Jalen Rayner, who's coming off a 6-touchdown performance against UMass. So it looks like maybe, and this is what I love about college football, because on one hand, it looks like, the sky's falling. On the other hand, you get these kids that can come from nowhere and you throw them into the line. It wasn't week 1 starter, sort of like what we talked about with FIU's quarterback. It wasn't a week 1 starter, but then all of a sudden they get out there after who knows what's going through the head coach's mind of why he didn't play the kid when he played him. Maybe there was a reason for it. But the fact is they apparently they got this really interesting kid to keep an eye on because that could really change the program. Troy, meanwhile, has beaten Arkansas State the last 2 by an 86-29 margin. So if Arkansas State's for real, then we'll definitely find out when they take on a quality team like Troy.
Yeah, we were ready to bury Arkansas State at the beginning of the season here, but they've come alive of late. So whether or not it's for real or not, we're going to find out this week. This will be the deciding turn in the road for them. Are they going to go left and go south, or are they going to go right and start to angle their way into a bowl game?
And then I want to talk about this as another one of my double-digit upset plays. Terry Bowden and the Warhawks of Louisiana Monroe, who lost last week to Appalachian State as a 14-point dog on a 54-yard field goal as time expired. So that is a stinger. But let's keep this in mind. They had already beaten Army as a 10-point home dog earlier this year, so they were that close to a 13-point, to another win against another double-digit win. The reason I want to mention that is because since Terry Bowden has taken over the last 2 years, they have had 5 upsets of 9 points or higher, including 13, 23, and 32. And the 13 was against South Alabama. In 2021, they're a 12-point dog in this one. They're getting 350 on the money line, give or take. They're 7-2 against the spread as a home dog under Bowden, 2-0 in that spot this year. And South Alabama, we talked about it last week. There's some issues there with the receivers, and they're not as explosive as they were. Well, and they had an injury on defense here or there. Well, South Alabama losing to James Madison. James Madison, even though the score was the way it was, James Madison really kind of dominated that game early enough. And under Kane Womack, their head coach, they're only 2-6 as a road favorite. So both coaches, in 2 years they've been with their program, year 3, they've gone in completely different ways with their current trends of road favorite versus home dog. So definitely I would take the points, and why not roll the dice on Louisiana Monroe once again as a double-digit home dog.
Well, you're taking a double-digit home dog against a team that's gone sour. For all intents and purposes, everybody had them winning the Sun Belt. Now suddenly with the injuries, they're not performing well at all. And you've got the Terry Bowden factor, as you called out here. He's really been excellent in roles, taking double digits. I think he's been a real spark to this program. He's put them back on the map at least. Yep, they were completely desolate before he got there. I'm with you. I think they're a live dog, and I think they're also a live money line dog.
and we'll find out. Not just Louisiana Monroe, but I'll segue this to Bowling Green is too in the MAC, and that is, are these teams just going to come up with these upsets every year or two, or are they ready to take the next step? Is Louisiana Monroe ready to compete with some of the other teams in the Sun Belt? Well, we'll find out if they can beat South Alabama, because that's impressive. If they can do that, they're, I think, 3-2 overall. And now, hey, wait a second, we're a legitimate team. Same thing with Bowling Green in the spot at Miami. That's why I'm putting them on my double-digit list. I know they won it last week. I know it's hard to do it 2 weeks in a row, but this is now a conference game. This is where it really matters. And Bowling Green, if they're for real, if they're finally going to turn that corner that I've talked about for the past year and a half, that they're going to rebuild this program, they got to win a game like this. They're 9-3-3 as a road dog in their last 15. They upset Miami last year at home, so at least they know they could beat this team. They're 12-2 against the spread as MAC dogs of 3 or more in the second of back-to-back. And 1-10 against the spread off a dog win versus a 500 or more team. That's the bad part. So there are some bad trends. There are some good trends. So I'm kind of wiping that off as even. You got Miami with the big win against Cincinnati. They're having a really good season, but the fact is, you take away the Cincinnati game, they really haven't beaten, and haven't looked overly impressive the last few weeks as well. So maybe this is a good spot for Bowling Green. But just like I said with Louisiana Monroe, look, if you're for real and you're going to try to do something, well, you got to win this conference game.
I think the difference in Monroe and Bowling Green this week is with Monroe, you're taking on a team that's going south, and Miami's not shown that here
No.
just yet. So I don't know if we can make that call in this particular game. So that's why I think of the two, Monroe would get my vote.
And also, Bowling Green, look at his schedule: Liberty, Michigan, Ohio, and Georgia Tech to start the season. They upset Georgia Tech. They got blown out by Ohio, but they were very competitive against Michigan and Liberty. So we'll find out whether or not they can actually prove something in their matchup against Miami. Okay, now let's take a look at just the overall under the radar games for this week. And I'm going to put a couple on there that are Pac 12 games only because they're the type of games that the East Coasters and most people really, I don't think they pay a whole lot of attention to. And that's Washington State at UCLA and Arizona at USC. Fresno State at Wyoming, though, might be the most obvious under the radar from the, because a lot of these under the radar games are usually from the group of five. So they're the clear, I think, group of five under the radar game. But if you had to pick one of those three games to watch, which one would it be?
To watch,
To watch.
I would say to watch, it would probably be Washington State UCLA to find out whether or not Washington State is for real. But because I'm going to be going pretty strong to Wyoming here, I'll have two remotes in my hands and I'll be flipping back and forth.
All right. Now let's get your decision on which of my double digit picks you're going to take. And I'm going to put the picks up here one more time. There they are. So I have 7 this week, 4 from the double digits: Rutgers, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Louisiana Monroe.
Well, Rutgers over Wisconsin is very, very tempting with Greg Schiano, all of his numbers, and I think Wisconsin's a bit of a fraud. Uh, Kentucky is a really good football team, but you're beating the best team in the country. My vote's going to go to ULM Monroe over South Alabama for the reasons we just discussed, led by Terry Bowden. And you're beating a team that, as I mentioned before, is going south as opposed to improving right now. And Monroe, this is just the kind of game where they go in there, they pull the rug on somebody, and they leave all of a sudden with the cash, and you regret not having bet them on the money line.
All right, Mark, appreciate it. As always, don't forget to check out Mark Lawrence and the Playbook Experts on the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. Of course, we have a link in the description for that. And you could also check out some of if for whatever reason, you don't want to watch the entire show, you could check out, we have some of the segments that are available on the channel that you might want to take a look at, including the roundtable segment. that I believe is available right now as we speak.
Cool.
Definitely
Yes,
by the
it
time
is.
you listen to this one.
Nice.
So check that out. Mark, appreciate it as always. And don't forget also, Mark's got he's actually going to record his college football free play of the week. That's going to be available on the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. So check that out. We're not going to let you know what that is. You're going to have to check out the YouTube channel to find out who he likes in the Michigan-Minnesota game. So, Mark, I appreciate it.
Hey, Greg, my pleasure. As always, enjoy the games, be well, and we'll do it again next week.